Morning Prime. We continue pace with the conversation. We want to focus on Haiti right now, where Haiti's Prime Minister landed in Puerto Rico on Tuesday, clearing uncertainty around his whereabouts since a trip to Kenya. But questions on how and when he will return to Haiti still linger as gangs back home push for his ouster. Prime Minister Ariel Henry traveled to Kenya last week to seal a deal to launch a UN-backed multinational security force to fight gangs in Haiti, which sparked violence and calls for a top gang leader for him to step down and stay away from the country. Puerto Rico's governor's office confirmed Henry had landed in the capital, San Juan, after reports from local media said the Dominican Republic, which shares the island of Hispaniola with Haiti, had earlier not authorized his plane to land. Haiti's government declared a state of emergency on Sunday after inmates escaped in two major prison breaks, halting businesses, including airports, which have seen heavy gunfire take place near them in recent days. On the Bahamas, Bangladesh and Barbados, Benin and Chad have formally notified the United Nations of intent to contribute personnel to an international force to help Haitian National Police fight armed gangs. A UN spokesman said on Thursday the United Nations Security Council authorized in October a foreign security mission to Haiti, a year after the Caribbean country asked for help to fight violent gangs that have largely overrun its capital, Port-au-Prince. The 15-member council's resolution requires countries to inform UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres of their participation in the security mission. While approved by the Security Council, the mission is not a UN operation. Kenya, of course, stepped forward last year with a pledge of 1,000 police, but a local court barred the move as unconstitutional. We want to just look at this as well. Let me just rope you in, Dr. Hassan Kaninje, with this latest development so far. First of all, with the state of emergency in Haiti, after he came from this country, it seems he can't land in his own country.
Well, if you can't land, that means it's going to be hard for you to govern where you can't even, land. Now, the truth is the problem has been there in Haiti. And right now, there is a crisis of legitimacy that the current administration is facing. There was an expectation that there was going to be an election following the assassination of the previous leader, and that has not happened. So both the ruling institutions and parliament, they've pretty much, they outlived their mandate, and they are supposed generally to vacate, those offices. And so there is a perception inside Haiti that foreign forces that are supposed to mean well with regard to peacekeeping, they're coming to embolden the government and support a government that they feel is legitimate. But there's also another dynamic that perhaps may have fueled some of this conflict, the current flare-up you see. The former wife of the assassinated leader actually has been accused and probably going to be charged for having been complicit in the murder of the president, that is, of her husband. Well, now, while there may be, questions why that is so, I think at the time, personally, I found it curious that the president could get 10 bullets and then, she's only shot on the hands and the leg. Generally, in lots of murder investigations, it's going to be very suspicious that how come the killer is around you in the most brutal way, but then you're shot in the arm and the leg. That is very strategic. When someone shoots you in the arm and the leg, it means they want you to survive. They don't want to injure you, seriously. And I think that raised questions that has now caught her into problems. But then she has a lot of followers. There are a lot of followers of the previous that she has used. If it's in fact true, then she has a lot of people she can be able to deploy, at a moment's notice to be able to cause havoc. But I think critically for us is this is also an attempt to try and preempt deployment of foreign forces. They're kind of spoilers. So sometimes they may not exactly possess the ability to take on an organized police or military force. But by so doing, of course, they raise questions with regard to the preparedness or the safety of the country, so that they can discourage potential deployments. Now, it is encouraging that other countries are pledging, willingness, express willingness to support the mission. Mm-hmm. Now, I think of concern, to us is there hasn't exactly been very sufficient, international planning for this kind of mission. And because it's not exactly UN-backed, there are questions about sustainability, beyond, of course, let's say, for instance, for Kenya 1 year. How is it going to be sustainable when you have multinational force, when, countries have not committed to funding, and the entire process is supposed to be for, to depend on the willingness of countries to chip in. And so if this has to be successful, perhaps this mandate, and at some point, it may require for it to be, or rather transformed into some kind of a UN mission that is actually backed by serious financing as well as serious planning. Haiti is, and boasts itself as being the first black republic, has been independent for more than 200 years. The challenge is also an example of how not to be a state. It is one of probably the most failed states, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but pretty much almost in the world. One of the poorest, beset by a lot of crises, the worst being the earthquake in 2009 that literally wiped out everything and even buried the presidential palace, and so it's a country that is in so much trouble. Now, I guess one last point, and especially that's probably going to be relevant, for us, this deployment, of course, which is being contested in court. In my assessment, deployment is a function it's a foreign policy function of the president. I'm not so sure where the court comes in. Of course, as a democracy, you have to allow voices to be heard, but I still expect that they're going to proceed to do that because the president has a prerogative when it comes to that, save for some parliamentary constraints that they may face. That as we go, for instance, and deploy our men and women in uniform, is going to be important to work with our partners who are very keen to see us deploy there, that there are going to be other aspects to be undertaken beyond peacekeeping. Mm-hmm. Now, in my assessment, there isn't much peace to keep in mm-hmm. Haiti. There is a lot more to enforce. There is no law and order to maintain either. There is literally, you have to
there's no
enforce peace to be able to enforce law and order, because it is pretty much a very chaotic place.
Right, but I wanted you just to look at the list of the countries so far that have pledged support there. We have Bangladesh, previously we had Benin, now we have Chad. That's another African country, just our neighbor here. And we have as well Barbados and Bahamas, some of the Caribbean countries, which also have not been very quick off the mark in picking up this particular call. This is when they're joining, when we can see the African countries who have indicated and given that, response that is so quick to this particular mission. Could we talk about these particular countries, beginning with Chad, where it is right now?
Yeah. Chad, of course, may want to demonstrate its solidarity with the people African gene pool, in the Caribbean. But Chad do not have the resources to be able to do that. Of course, they are hoping that they're going to be supported. But there are also other political aspects that I'm not sure Chad is going to actually qualify. Because those who are willing to support this kind of mission, I think they're reluctant. They may be reluctant with Chad at this point in time, in part because of the position, of course, they have taken with regard to their approach to a Western mission within West Africa itself and within Chad in fighting, especially the Boko Haram and other militants. And some of these countries are being seen to be a little bit more closer to, for instance, to the east and to the Russians. So it's going, I think, to be challenged with the political aspect. So I would not see Chad perhaps doing that, but I would see support perhaps for Benin, Bahamas, Barbados. Now, Benin probably may be able to produce a force if they're willing, it's going to be a little bit bigger than Bahamas and Barbados. But Bahamas and Barbados, they're very small islands, 300,000, as in they don't really have a lot of people. If they have a police force, it's probably less than 3,000 in total. So they are not going to play a significant role. And so what I think may happen is we may still have to see more African countries perhaps contributing significantly to that cause, led by Kenya, of course. But if they're a country in West Africa, they have an advantage, of course, of speaking French, which is, again, is going to be a lot more helpful. But generally, without certain commitments with regard to finance and equipment and appealing to the political or the ruling class in Port-au-Prince to transition, there's going to be a problem because we may run the risk of being perceived as enablers of an illegitimate regime.
Yeah. So is there any rhyme or reason, and the reason actually I'm sticking on Kagwanja is you'll just be leaving us momentarily. So I really, I want to, yeah. Yes. I'm facing, this is west. I'm facing more of west or the east. Watang family in Czech. So I want to just raise a question. In fact, you've made even my question now evaporate completely. Yeah. But it's trying, it deflected completely. I wanted to raise the reason of, is there any rhyme and reason that we have Chad going, Benin going? We still have our own issues as African countries, right? We can still talk about Kenya, at least we have a modicum of peace. But looking at Chad, looking at Benin, some of these African countries, people will question, hey, why don't you go home and keep your powder dry before you come and try and restore peace in our country? Case in point, Chad.
Yeah, no, you see, just because your house is on fire doesn't mean you cannot, throw water to your neighbor's house when it catches fire. Sometimes you have to do that.
Naturally, you can do that. You have to quench you on fire first, isn't it? Right? Yeah, we are all naturally artistic. We have to look at our own first.
But I think the scale of our problems are also different. You have states that are really facing complete collapse, like Haiti. And you have Chad that is facing, militant, struggles. It doesn't mean they've taken over the country. Of course, it's also a poor country, and so those questions may be legitimate. But I think they are in different places. And some of these problems are going to be there irrespective, of whether they do it or not. And so I think as countries that are trying to demonstrate their Pan-African credentials and solidarity with the people of African gene pool, it is, perfectly in order to see them make that kind of strategic, move. But of course, they don't have the resources to do that, and they're hoping that somebody else is going to foot the bill.
Yeah.
Look at all those countries.
Yeah.
They are miserable.
Yeah.
All of them.
That's all I'm asking.
And they all need some money,
yeah.
Pocket money. And all they are doing is telling the Americans, give us a little of that money, and we'll send a few policemen there. They're not going there to help. They can't. But they'll get a little pocket money and a few new equipment, Because when you send these people out there, one of the things they get, the country is good, they get fresh equipment.
Yes.
Free. They get pocket money for their soldiers and the government. And they don't have to go there and do anything, just go there. So you have all these miserable countries, each of them is miserable. Saying, okay, we are going to help put out a fire there. As ours is burning, we shall deal with it later.
Yeah,
but
that's the irony.
Yeah, I mean, it's not them.
Dibal,
it's not them.
Dibal, just to be honest, look at our own situation here in the country. The bandits in the northeast of the country, they are reigning supreme. If we really had an extra police force to send to Haiti, we probably could have used them to create some level of law and order in some parts of this country where banditry has become a way of life. And government is not being felt. The hegemony of the Kenyan state is actually not being felt. You've had cases where our interior minister is addressing a meeting here, and 5 kilometers, bandits are advancing. The other day when they were burying a teacher who was killed, under military and police escort, the bandits were attacking them. So if we really were serious with law and order, then that's a problem perhaps we need to sort out first. But the reason why we are dying to go to Haiti is one, to use it to perhaps appease our masters somewhere in the West, and also redeem our image. And the countries that have been listed here, they are looking for the same thing. Act good and use it to redeem yourself in your foreign policy. It could have been a different matter altogether. For example, if you had quote-unquote superpowers of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, in West Africa, teaming up with Kenya, Tanzania, from Eastern Africa, and South Africa, saying we want to redeem our brothers in Haiti. That could have been a different case. But when you talk about Bahamas, Chad, Bangladesh, Benin, Barbados, many people cannot locate these countries in the map of the world. But we understand they're using it for their own ends, project, get known. Now people know that Bahamas exists somewhere. We are talking about it this morning.
Could he also maybe be the guilty conscience that you have one of your Caribbean countries and none of you are actually responding to this call?
No, that's
we're talking about the gene pool here, that Africans are responding, and you are neighboring countries, Bahamas, Barbados, what's happening? No one is coming to our rescue at the end of the day.
Well, that could be. And then when you are dealing with a problem where you know that there is no easy solution, and people are ignoring, you ignore history at your own peril. The history of Haiti is very well known. This is a direct product of a revolution, a country that was created on resistance and very strong anti-imperial sentiments, which are in the resurgence right now in Haiti. And thinking that you can send, people who had a few months training and have been policing maybe in much more relatively peaceful regions of the world, to go and maintain law and order, which is not there. It is really not very reasonable. Innately, violence and chaos are part and parcel of the politics of Haiti over the years. Look at how many presidents have they killed. The one killed recently is not the first one. There's a time, I think, between 1911 and 1915, they killed around, is it 5 or 6 presidents? So what we are seeing as new is not new to the children of resistance of Haiti. For them, that is part of life. Anything that has any traces of foreign dominance, imperial tendency, they will resist. That's part of their history. So we are setting ourselves for failure. I don't know whether we will achieve to appease the powers that be globally, but I'm glad Prof. Macharia was talking about our world becoming increasingly multipolar.
Thank you.
And we are not going to have the quote-unquote the big boys in the international system to please anymore.
Right.
There will be too many actually to please if you wanted to do that.
Right. Peter Kabuwancha.
Well, I think I will start by being a Kenyan.
Yes.
And say that I'm very proud of our courts.
Yes.
Because they saved lives. If you cannot see that calculation, then there's a problem. Our courts saved the lives of Kenyans. Why? Because however you want to look at it, Haiti is a meat grinder. The casualties, the deaths are. You don't need to be a security expert in order to know that you are taking your fellow countrymen to a guillotine. Why? Obviously, they had killed the previous president, and they had killed the president, so they have now an acting president. Their acting president has been on the run right before he even came to Kenya to sign that agreement. He was on the run. And on the run, he escaped assassination himself.
Yes.
Right? And it has been said this is not a country that takes these issues lightly. Yeah. I lived with Aristide in South Africa for 5 years in the same department. He was in exile because if he stepped in Haiti, he would be killed. So he escaped for his life, the former president. And yesterday, over 4,000 criminals broke jail in Haiti, and now they are on the loose and they are under control.
It's their Bastille.
Yeah, they have basically left prison. Now we have 1,000 Kenyan troops to stop 4,000 criminals on the roofs.
Prof,
who have broken the rails.
It is telling that one of the leading militia leaders is called Barbecue.
Barbecue, yes. No, actually he's the top now. He's the top. The contender to succeed.
I foresee.
It's called Barbecue.
That's telling.
Yeah.
I mean, there is fire somewhere. Where there is barbecue.
Yes, you know. So barbecue's forces have been enlarged by 4,000 criminals who broke jail yesterday.
Plus 20,000.
Now, plus now 20,000 that are on the roofs, and you are taking 1,000 Kenyans to Haiti in such an environment. And of all those, apart from the Bangladeshis and the Kenyans, the others speak French. At least they will know how, when they are being attacked to hide. The Kenyans.
Actually, the U.S. has withdrawn its people from Haiti.
And that's the time. So what's the big issue here?
Even if you get intelligence that actually it's in French, you cannot
you
decipher
you cannot decipher
with
the
what is happening in Ukraine and the Germany on, on the ground at the end of the day. Yes.
At the end of the day. So in other words, I don't think we have ever made such a I wouldn't call it foolish decision, but an uninformed decision as this one.
Right.
And what was driving it? I think it's the 100 million dollars.
US dollars.
Yeah. So we've become slave traders in the 21st century.
Right.
And we need to rethink our morals as a country. Shame on us.
Shame on us.
Shame on us.
Let me before I let you go, Kanenje, so that I wanted just to ask, what does it really portend that we have a state of emergency right now, and we have that particular agreement that has been signed between Kenya and Haiti when we had Henry here, and now there is a potential coup that is in the offing as we know it, because they are going full steam ahead with this particular effort, these gangs. Will this particular ties hold? Because when you talk about illegitimate government, what is the legitimacy also of the signing agreement that was celebrated here in the country or officiated here in the country?
Yeah, perception is reality, and the legitimacy, of course, comes from the population. However, I'm not seeing a likely coup under these circumstances, because the international kind of climate may come extremely down very hard on whoever is going to take over power in Haiti at this stage. What the international community has to do is to have this regime negotiate their way out of power and give a semblance of hope that is going to be an alternative. Because within the current context, if the status quo and if there is no promise that this is going to change, then the problem of rebellion, people who've been rebelling for 200 years, of course, are not going to go away overnight.
All right. Thank you. I'll let you go right now. Thank you for joining us.
Just a quick one. A friend of mine wrote to me, he's based in Washington, and told me, Professor, advise the Kenyans not to go to Haiti. His reason was simple, that inside Haiti, we are perceived as defenders of imperialism. And we are seen as people who are anti-people in Haiti. It's like you're getting an external occupation force. So Kenyans go to that place as an occupation force. And I think that was the argument that was being made. And we need to put it this way, that we are not going to Haiti in support of the Haitians. We are going to Haiti on the side of the occupiers, if you wish, the imperialists, according to the Haiti's resistant movement. And when the people rise up, as they are doing,
They cannot be crazy. The whole country is rising up against a regime. Then there must be something wrong with that. And I think we should not be caught ourselves as Kenyans on the wrong side of history. Because we were caught once on the side of history and we paid dearly for it in apartheid. Some of our elite who were very high-headed thought that we were better than the rest of us, and therefore they drew their lot behind the apartheid regime in South Africa. And for many years as Kenyans, we were seeing the other country that was siding because we wanted to be at peace with Ronald Reagan, we wanted to be good boys to the conservatives in Britain.
Right, thank you.
And here we are.
Right, thank you. I'll sort out your mic as well, Kagwaja. Let's hear from Professor Munene. We'll come to you.
I would agree with Peter here. It's a terrible mistake that Kenya is walking into disaster in this matter. Just mention that yesterday the United States told its people to get the hell out of Haiti.
Yeah.
And
the United States told its people to
get out.
Get out.
I think the Canadians have also done the same thing. Just get out. The place is bad. The Prime Minister is hiding in Puerto Rico. That's the United States. He's been given refuge in the place instead of going home. So for Kenya to say it's going there, whether you like it or not, is really warped thinking. The end result, you have an uprising, a revolution taking place. Barbecue himself has compared himself to the Haitian Revolution, Dessalines. He sees himself as the new Dessalines. And for him, this is a repeat of the revolution that brought independence to the people of Haiti. And for him, this fellow, Henri, is just a puppet.
Yeah.
He's in fact, he's just an instrument to be used by the wrong people. So how do you deal with the wrong instruments? You get rid of it. You said it's just going to go away. A revolution taking place. It's not just a coup. It's not no longer. You don't talk about a coup here. Here is not a coup. This is the revolution situation. Now, for Kenya to get there as the Nyapara, trying to contain for the benefit of the United States, essentially. Because the US paying for these things. Even those little countries that are saying are going, they're just looking for American money, and little pocket money. It's not even the United Nations. Although officially use the United Nations. It is the United States. The end result, trying to contain a revolutionary movement, can be disastrous.
Can be disastrous.
Yes, because you are not going to win. And it's not a very good idea to be seen as the instruments of imperial desire, to be the Nyapara. I was in Moscow there and I met some Americans there. The first question is, what are you Kenyans doing? Wait a minute.
He's an American and asking what we're doing.
Yeah, what are you doing there? We were playing the imperial girl. It's an American, So you see, you don't know what to say. But I think the president made a mistake. Because he's the one driving this thing in connection with Joe Biden. They're good friends. Outside that, it does not make sense. The $100 million or 200, sometimes I hear being said it's 200. I mean, that's peanuts. The expenses and all, but the lives that are likely to be lost in exchange for $100 million, $200 million is an insult to intelligence. And it should be looked at that way. And I hope the president and his advisors, his teams that are behind this thing will rethink the whole thing. Because it's not going to work. And it will not make the president look good. He's not going to look good.
Well, it seems the horse has bolted. So he's been in the country. We have the president who will also be going for a state visit in the United States. I know this particular conversation will be largely on the table as well.
He'll be given some dinner at the White House. Nothing else.
Some banquet that will go down in his favor. But when you're talking about the compensation bit of it, that you say it's penance, it's not really about the compensation. I think it's when you said it's the spirit of what? We had the president really talking about the spirit of servanthood, of solidarity.
Solidarity.
Yeah, brotherhood at the end of the day. It's about the gesture. It is not about the money.
You see, you can talk about brotherhood, you can talk about servanthood, only in a situation that is in tandem with the real situation on the ground. You know, at least for once, Dibal, listen to historians. The Haitians are children of war, all for the last 200 years. And I said earlier, anything that has traces of foreign domination, imperialism, anything that, you know, oozes some Americanism, they will resist it. And then when we go there behind the back of what a country perceived to be imperialist, you know, we ignite the feelings that people in the Caribbean feel about us. We sold them there. Slavery was not a one-dimensional affair. We were involved in selling them there. And when they have worked very hard to liberate themselves, we are selling them the second time. That's a bit too much. They will resist. Perhaps we are grappling to understand why our foreign policy makers reached this decision. And the ideas of the Cambridge historian, Professor John Iliff, in his book, The History of Honor, talks about the warriorhood tradition in Africa. Courage and the warriorhood is what is at the core of the African. Maybe that is what is making us walk into a barbecue, literally. We are going to you know, have our men and women roasted, and we know that. We cannot sell our soul at the cost of $100 million US, you say? That's a bit too little for the lives. So that's why we are saying that from the very beginning, and we have been in this forum, Dibal, for a while now, this was a mission impossible, and it will remain so.
Right. Professor Kagwanja,
I think we needed to fill in the facts about the reality on the ground. We have talked about the figures of those who have escaped jail, but the leadership of the rebellion, what is now pushing the Prime Minister and the acting president to Puerto Rico, which is Costa Rica, which is part of the U.S. territory, is Jimmy Barbecue Cherize. He is leading a coalition of what is called a Group of 9 coalition. And the Group of 9 coalition is supported by 20,000 criminals, if you wish, in the Haitian language.
Well armed.
Very, very well armed. And now buttressed by nearly 4,000 others from yesterday. And if you look at the coalition, the total number of people who are going to Haiti from Bangladesh and all, and unfortunately, this is a group of people chosen from the poorest of the world countries, except Kenya, which doesn't fit the bill in all the ways, from language to the size and the moral standing of the country. Benin has been on the red list of the African Union because of multiple coups. Chad just assassinated his president last year, but one, was assassinated. Now they have the son of the president in power. Last week they assassinated the opposition leader in Chad. So, in other words, it is like countries that are already in a criminal wave are the ones that are going to Haiti. And the problem is, when killings occur in Haiti, they are going to be blamed on the Africans. So this is literally instigating black-on-black violence. And Kenya is falling into that trap. The black-on-black violence was experienced in South Africa, where you get the Zulus to kill the
us as another Africans, and then you blame Africans for killing Africans. So you get the Haitians, the Benin, you get the Chadians, you get the Kenyans, and then you take them to Haiti because you have to be on the self-defense. Then they will have to shoot civilians, and this is in a country where people are in a revolutionary mood, and you are seen to be on the side of the imperialists. So you are going to be shot down like doves. And what does this mean? You are literally in the 21st century, not reading. I mean, if I was a minister for education tomorrow, I would make history compulsory, so that you don't make mistakes that our grandfathers made. You don't repeat the same things that those in the past did. And I'm not saying this because I was trained as a historian, but because it is important not to repeat the mistakes of yesterday. And Kenya is right on track, engaging in new slave trade, putting its people on carnage, and for the reason of money only. Because there is no moral standing that convinces us that we have to go to Haiti. There is no moral basis. And two, I would understand if you are taking KDF, because these are people who are trained to fight and so on. We can question the morality, but why would you take the police, who are supposed to be enforcers of law and order? You talk to people first. Tell them why you are arresting them before you shoot them, right? Now, you don't even have the language. You cannot speak French. And the entire population speak French. Why would you go to Haiti?
And Diba, you see, the narrative that is informing all this, that ends up describing the likes of PPQ as, terrorists, militias, from their own perspectives, these are great nationalists. A few decades back, Mandela was the leading terrorist of the world, banned from traveling to the UK, to the US. But now, he's a hero, So, PPQ is in his way to history books of Haiti as one of the leading nationalists who stood up against imperialists at the time of need. And we know already from history, when one narrative is what we have from the American and the Western media that describes these people as terrorists, but the real world on the ground, these are great nationalists fighting for the dignity of their country one more time.
I was wondering, just to try and connect, whether Barbecue and his team in Haiti, of course they keep up, and they know what's going on in Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali, and they want to repeat that. Because you see the pattern is almost the same. They are attacking institutions, the system, not the individual.
Not the individual.
So the system is wrong in Haiti. They want to change it. Just as it happened in
you saw him the other day. I saw him in one of the YouTube clips, telling actually the people that these guns are not going to be used against you. They are going to be used against an illegal government. I saw that clip. You can hear that narrative.
And because of it, police officers in Haiti are resigning. Last week, of another, not the jail now. So the police officers are resigning from the government. The jailers are breaking from prison, meaning with the collaboration of those who are supposed to keep them behind bars. And what do you call a revolution? How would you define a revolution? And then you take your 1,000 countrymen to this guillotine.
All right. Let's head over to, I think we've exhausted now what is happening in Haiti, but we want to follow up also what is happening with the African Union and Sudan, where the African Union suspended Sudan's membership following the, if you may roll the autocue for me, please. The African Union suspended Sudan's membership following the October 25th, 2021 military takeover, which eventually led to conflict between the army and the Rapid Support Forces, that is RSF. Subsequently, the AU formed a high-level mediation group to facilitate a return to stability. On Sunday, Sudan's de facto leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhani, met with the members of the AU high-level panel on the resolution of the conflict in Sudan, led by Mohamed Ibn Chambers. According to a statement from the Sovereignty Council, Al-Burhan expressed Sudan's confidence in the AU's potential solutions, but only if the state regains its full membership and the organization treats it as such. Chambers, according to the statement, reiterated the organization's commitment to ending the conflict and achieving stability in Sudan. Also, he emphasized that the delegates has engaged with all relevant stakeholders, including various politicians or political forces. The three-member mechanism was established by the AU Commission in January 2024 to facilitate dialogue, restore constitutional order, and work collaboratively with Sudanese stakeholders and the international community towards lasting peace. And we just want to latch a bit on that latest development, conditions from the general there. What does it really portend with Sudan? But at least they're coming to the table finally. I don't know what will be your input. Let's begin with you, Professor Macharia.
Well, it's a positive development. Question is, how serious is it? I think starting with conditions that may not be met, that's a problem. If Baram insists, first of all, admit us back before we can talk, that might mean that there'll be no talk. And so maybe the way they are going about it may be questionable. When you have these public performances in the name of diplomacy, sometimes they undermine the very effort. So if there had been some discussions behind the scenes on both camps, say, can we do this, can we do this? And then you go public as making demands, you may not even start. But it's a positive thing if they are thinking that way, to see whether they can come together and weigh the weight, who has what and does not. And if you have nothing, then of course, usually it is in your interest to talk when you are weak. When you are strong, you think you can win, so you don't. So that's what needs to be assessed. And then to convince both sides that it is in their interest. Forget about the country. In their interest as parties to have discussions and end this matter. That's what the task is. And whether we have a group of people called high something, how believable are they? To both sides. And that may also be a problem. That you have too many of these high, this. And when you look at the composition of that high, you wonder about the height of the people. So they are not believable. That could be a problem.
Okay.
But Professor Kawanja here is better, has been involved in those things more than I have.
What do you think about those conditions?
First and foremost, the AU is on the right in terms of just getting Sudan on the list of countries that are outlawed. Basically, regimes that are completely out of law. And that is according to the Africa Peace and Security, the protocol establishing the Peace and Security Council, the African Union. The protocol requires that the African Union impose a ban on any country that undertakes an illegal takeover of government. They did that to Egypt until Egypt decided to regularize its government, and Al-Sisi was elected. But in the case of Sudan, it's a very complex case. And that's why the ban is still going on, because there are three coups in one by the same person. Fatah al-Sisi, Fatah Burhani took a coup. First and foremost, tried to suppress public protests by killing thousands. Then, when it could not work, he carried a coup against Omar al-Bashir and put al-Bashir in a cage. Then after that, a transitional government was put in place, and Abdallah Hamdok was made the prime minister and the civilian leader of the country. Burhani took a coup against Abdallah Hamdok and pushed him into exile in the Middle East. Now, when in power, they disagreed with his deputy, Hamedit, and now he tried to kick his deputy out of power. basically fighting for absolute power. And he has no intentions whatsoever to return Sudan to democracy. And at the same time, protests continued in the streets. So the big question is, with whom is he supposed to negotiate? Who are supposed to be the negotiators of this peace? And Sudan is one case where everybody is doing what they think they need to do, rather than diagonizing the whole situation and coming up with the real people to negotiate with. The real people to negotiate with are the Sudanese people. So in other words, there need to be a convention, not a negotiation. Because those who are calling around the table to negotiate are criminals. They have already carried out 2 coups in succession. Against al-Bashir and against Abdel Hamdok, the civilian successor of Bashir. Now, so who do you want to bring in? Bring all the people. Bring in Hamdok, bring in the two soldiers, and bring in the civilians, right? And let's have a convention, because even if you negotiated peace and there is peace between Hemedti and Burhani, you are basically legitimizing the coups. And these are, in the first place, the one that got Sudan kicked out of the African Union. So negotiation between the two can only be to end the war, which is killing Sudanese. End the war. After that, then you have a negotiation on democracy in Sudan. How do you return to civilian rule? And, you know, al-Bashir himself, who was dethroned, had himself come to power through a military coup. But this is at the time when the AU had not come into place, and the current law had not come into place. So even him, he was Rigo. So what is the big question in the Sudan? When is democracy coming to Sudan? That's a big question. And the African Union and the Arabs, you know, in the Gulf, who are leading these negotiations, should take cognizance of what Sudan needs. Sudan currently needs a negotiation to democracy, not negotiation to legitimize Burhani or to legitimize Hemedti or these other leaders. If Burhani decides to subject himself to democratic tests, for example, convening an election and being elected by the Sudanese people, then we can see a situation of Egypt coming back. Because Fattah al-Sisi took a coup against Morsi and then subjected himself to election, and now he's a legitimate leader. If that's the path they want to follow, well and good. But negotiating to legitimize coups won't work. So high or low, this panel is holding the wrong end of the stick.
All right.
Well, Deepal, as we live, I think Prof is well versed with the events of modern Sudan. But one thing is, what Sudan is going through is actually what I call the curse of the fall of the African strong men. Everywhere you have had an African strongman fall, from Siad Barre in Somalia, to Mobutu Sese Seko in Democratic Republic of Congo, to Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, to Mugabe in Zimbabwe. The subsequent events are not very good to the country in question. Unless a strongman emerges to keep the country together and push it towards democracy, like Olusegun Obasanjo did in Nigeria. Egypt seems to go that direction. You need another strongman who will take control of the situation to transit the country to a much more stable situation. Without that, you are not going to see peace and democracy in Sudan soon.
All right. We're due for our station break right now. You're watching Global Today. When we come back also, we give you the latest development in Rwanda, where we can see Rwanda is opposing the South African Development Corporation troops, that is from SADC, and they're against it. And this is what is the latest development from there. We had the Rwandan Foreign Minister, Vincent Biruta, saying in a letter to the chairperson of the AU Commission, Musa Faki, that Rwanda learned with great concern about a scheduled meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council, part of whose objective is to endorse the deployment of the SADC. So we shall be looking at that as well. And it's a big win for Biden and also for Donald Trump in the Super Tuesday right? Winning in their respective constituencies.